weight, injuries, and trade rumors are already turning the Knicks season into a pressure cooker, and some fans might be focusing on the wrong problems. And this is the part most people miss: what looks like a weight issue or a simple depth problem may actually be about fit, roles, and tough front office decisions. Guerschon Yabusele is genuinely puzzled by why his weight has suddenly become such a talking point among Knicks fans this season. He joined New York as a free agent over the summer and insists that his weight hasn't gone up at all compared to his time with the 76ers last year, stressing that his current playing condition is actually slightly lighter than it was then. He points out that if his weight wasn't viewed as a problem in Philadelphia, it's hard for him to understand why it's being framed as an issue now in New York. On paper, the Knicks have Yabusele listed at 283 pounds, placing him among the heavier players in the league. Some online listings previously showed him closer to 265 pounds last season, but those numbers appear misleading, since the Sixers' own media guide had him at 279 pounds, much closer to his current official listing. The narrative around his size seems to have intensified mainly because his on-court production has dipped, not because his body has dramatically changed. This season, Yabusele's numbers paint the picture of a role player struggling to find rhythm. He is averaging 2.7 points and 2.2 rebounds over 15 games, with only about 10.5 minutes of floor time per night. His shooting splits have been underwhelming, which stands out even more because he was significantly more effective when he first returned to the NBA last year. But here's where it gets controversial: are fans blaming his body type for what might simply be a cold stretch, limited role, or system fit? Despite the noise, Yabusele maintains that he isn't letting the criticism get to him. He says he feels healthy and in strong physical shape, and he prefers to focus on playing his game rather than obsessing over outside commentary. From his perspective, the conversation about his weight is a distraction from what actually matters: his performance, his responsibilities within the system, and how he can help the team as the season progresses. The Knicks have more to worry about than just fan chatter, though. Guard Landry Shamet is set to miss at least 4 weeks with a right shoulder sprain, taking a useful rotation piece out of the lineup for a significant stretch. While his contract is non-guaranteed, there is no strong expectation that the team will cut him, especially since teams are required to keep paying players who are injured while they recover. In other words, waiving him wouldn't unlock any financial advantage in the short term. Head coach Mike Brown has gone out of his way to express how much he values Shamet's presence on the roster. He even joked that he would sacrifice his own salary to keep Shamet around, a strong public signal that the coaching staff sees him as an important part of what the Knicks are trying to build. But here's where a subtle debate starts: should loyalty and locker room value outweigh the desire for roster flexibility when injuries pile up and the trade deadline creeps closer? Meanwhile, Josh Hart has been quietly grinding through his own challenges and finding ways to improve. While dealing with a splint on his right ring finger, he has worked closely with Knicks shooting coach Peter Patton to refine his jumper. Hart describes the process as making small, targeted adjustments and then focusing on smoothing everything out, which is a great example of how even established NBA players are constantly tweaking mechanics to adjust to injuries, roles, and changing defenses. Beyond individual storylines, there's a bigger roster construction question hanging over the Knicks: where is the real positional weakness? Some observers acknowledge that depth at center and power forward isn't ideal, but argue that the more urgent need is a dependable backup point guard. A stable secondary ball handler could keep the offense organized when the primary initiators sit, and that becomes even more important in the playoffs, when every possession is magnified. But here's where it gets controversial: should the Knicks focus on beefing up the front court, or are they one solid backup guard away from a more serious run? Potential trade talk inevitably circles back to names that might be on the move. Yabusele, Miles McBride, and several younger players are frequently mentioned as the most realistic trade chips if New York decides to reshape the rotation. That raises uncomfortable but necessary questions: is it worth sacrificing promising youth or depth pieces to shore up one specific need, especially when chemistry and continuity are so fragile in a high-pressure market like New York? In the end, the Knicks' situation is about much more than a number on a scale, a shoulder sprain, or a shooting tweak. It's about how all these small factors add up: fans' perceptions, the coaching staff's trust, front office risk tolerance, and the pressure to win now while still planning for the future. So here's the question that could split opinions in the comments: Knicks fans and decision-makers focusing on the right problems, or are weight debates and fringe rotation gripes distracting everyone from the bigger issue of how this roster is actually built? Do you think Yabusele is being unfairly targeted, or is his conditioning a legitimate concern? Should the front office prioritize a backup point guard, or shore up the big man depth first? Share whether you agree or completely disagree, and why.